2025 is no longer just a retail crisis. It's a slow-motion unraveling of something much deeper. Your access to food, medicine, jobs, and even a basic sense of routine. Major chains are collapsing one after another, not with sirens, but with final sales, locked doors, and empty shelves. And by the time the headlines catch up, your neighborhood may already be too late. What if your local grocery store, pharmacy, or clothing shop shut down tomorrow, and no one ever reopened it? It's already happening.
If you're not panicking yet, you really should be. They said, I work in supply chain, on the phone, all day yesterday with American and Chinese companies, freight forwarders, manufacturers, on and on. The USA is in massive, massive trouble.
Not just in small towns, but across the country, quietly, relentlessly, without warning. Every closed sign means a lost job, a longer drive to groceries, a broken habit, a community left without a center. This isn't just about business, this is about survival. Welcome to the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. What's disappearing isn't just stores. It's the version of America we thought would always be here. Number 1, Starbucks. What if even the most peaceful and familiar corners in our life are starting to vanish one by one? There was a time when the green siren logo meant more than just coffee. It meant a warm table you didn't have to earn. Somewhere to take a breath between jobs, classes, or life's long stretches of silence. But now, that symbol is disappearing, starting not in the glamorous urban centers, but in the quiet neighborhoods where its presence once felt most necessary. From 2022 to 2025, over 500 Starbucks stores have quietly closed across the US, especially in low-traffic areas where profit margins thinned. But even so, people still needed a place to feel part of the world. The company is shifting toward drive-through and mobile orders, efficiency over presence, transaction over community. It sounds logical on a balance sheet, but outside those numbers are people who no longer have anywhere to sit, to think, or to simply exist. The reasons are layered. Rising costs of everything from milk to labor. Ongoing worker unrest. Customers are growing wary of overpriced drinks in a time when groceries already stretch thin. And in the middle of that shift, stores in working-class suburbs and commuter towns are going dark. What disappears with each closure isn't just a latte. It's the quiet habit that made modern life bearable. The high school student who reviewed flashcards by the window before a final exam. The retired man who lingered every morning with a small coffee and yesterday's newspaper. The delivery driver who recharged their phone in the corner seat between runs. These weren't luxuries, they were little anchors in an increasingly untethered world. In some places, the loss is deeper than inconvenience. In towns where libraries close early and malls are hollowed out, Starbucks wasn't just a coffee shop, it was heat in the winter, a socket to charge your lifeline. For people without stable housing, it was a way to blend in. For those without a home office, it was the only place where Wi-Fi and dignity came free with a drink. Now, the lights are out. There's a quiet erosion happening of the invisible places that held people together. When a space like Starbucks goes away, it doesn't scream, but slowly. You realize how much you leaned on it. Emotionally, practically, spiritually. What happens when even the most basic public spaces begin to vanish, and when that disappears? What else are we expected to hold ourselves up with? Number 2, Kroger. What happens when even your weekly grocery trip becomes a luxury, and the nearest fresh vegetable is miles away for decades?
It's going to affect everybody's lives, and everything is increasing, has been, and continue to goes up.
Kroger was more than just a grocery chain. It was the second largest in the entire United States, with over 2,700 stores serving millions of families each week. In some counties, especially across the Midwest and South, Kroger was the only full-service supermarket for miles. It was where people filled prescriptions, picked up last-minute dinners. But in 2025, that picture is quietly cracking. After merging with Albertsons, Kroger announced it would close over 400 stores across the country. Official reasons point to restructuring, overlapping locations, and lagging profitability. But beneath those sterile explanations lies a reality that is far more painful. In low-income neighborhoods and rural communities, these closures are leaving behind gaping holes. Places where there are no replacements, no alternatives, and no backup plans. Shelves go dark, parking lots sit empty, and people, already stretched thin by inflation and rising fuel costs, are forced to drive even hundreds of miles to find another store that sells affordable produce. For the elderly, that trip isn't just inconvenient, it's nearly impossible. For workers juggling 2 jobs, it's the difference between groceries and gas. For single parents on SNAP, it means crossing county lines to find a store that will take their card. In some communities, buses don't even run that far, so people adjust. They buy less, they eat more from cans, they go without. Fresh fruit becomes a holiday treat. Milk becomes optional. Local farmers, who once supplied Kroger with eggs, greens, and dairy, begin to lose contracts. Without volume, their operations collapse. One closure ripples outward, not just across industries, but across dinner tables. And so a quiet transformation begins, not with alarms, but with people skipping meals, eating less, traveling farther, and feeling that they are not part of the plan. Perhaps for the first time, Kroger didn't just sell groceries, it anchored entire communities. And when anchors lift, what's left to keep people steady? Number 3, Macys. What happens when a symbol of tradition becomes just another vacancy sign? There was a time when walking past Macys during the holidays felt like walking through a dream. The windows were stories. People didn't just shop. They had hope and they enjoyed the very moment. It wasn't just about clothes or sales. It was about the assurance that some things, some places, would always be there to welcome them. But now, behind locked glass doors, those dreams have stopped. The aisles that once held thousands now hold nothing but silence. And outside, in towns across America, people walk by a piece of their past. Boarded up. Forgotten. Since 2020, Macys has closed over 125 stores, laying off more than 12,800 workers. Once the largest department store chain in the U.S., its footprint shrinks every year. In a world that rewards speed and algorithms, Macys can no longer compete. Online giants offer convenience, but they cannot replace the warmth of being handed a gift-wrapped box by someone who smiled and meant it. They cannot replicate the memory of trying on your first coat under warm lights, or browsing for a suit. And in the places Macys leaves behind, the loss is louder than any headline. Communities lose their gathering place. Mall employees lose their second jobs. Grandparents lose the only store where they felt welcome asking for help. Teenagers lose the freedom of wandering aimlessly, learning the world through storefronts. It's not just about closing stores, it's about closing chapters of life and saying goodbye to your good old day. And if a chain that defined over 160 years of American life can be erased by the quiet logic of profit margins, what else might we lose? Simply because we couldn't benefit this country enough. Number 4, Nordstrom. Guess what just disappears not with a crash, but with a whisper no one hears until it's too late. For decades, Nordstrom didn't just sell clothes, it sold reassurance. The soft lighting, the neatly folded silks, the quiet kindness of someone offering to hem your clothes while you wait. It reminded Americans, even those just browsing, that you still matter behind polished glass doors. But in 2025, that sense of reassurance is unraveling. The escalators still run, but no one's riding. Stores in once proud city centers close with little fanfare, just a locked door, a blank window, and a for lease sign swaying in silence. Behind them, Nordstrom is cutting all underperforming locations in a desperate bid to save $150 million in costs. Traffic is down, revenue is soft. Optimism has been downsized. The reasons aren't sensational. They're systemic. Rent is too high. Online competition is too strong. Even those who once had spending power now hesitate, because that $400 coat feels different when groceries are up 30% and medical bills are late. Remote work has emptied wardrobes. And inflation has emptied confidence. But the real loss isn't just Nordstrom. It's what goes with it. The middle-aged stylist quietly laid off. The college student who relied on weekend shifts for tuition. The local florist who supplied boutique arrangements for the cosmetics counter, no longer called. The mall itself, once anchored by elegance, now echoing with vacancy and dust. In the quiet fallout, something else begins to fade the shared spaces where aspiration once lived. Trying on a suit meant dreaming of a new job, where a bottle of perfume wasn't a splurge. It was a way to feel seen. And if even the world of just looking is closing its doors, where do we go to feel like we still belong? Number 5, Banana Republic. What if the last place where dressing up still fits your budget is quietly disappearing overnight for millions of Americans? Banana Republic wasn't just about fashion. It was about finally feeling like you belonged, not in luxury, but in order. There was a time when stepping into a Banana Republic meant stepping into a version of yourself that looked ready for work, for travel, for being taken seriously. The lighting was soft, the hangers were straight, and the clothes, they weren't loud, but they whispered, "You've got this." That quiet confidence, for many, was everything. But today, those spaces are vanishing. Without a headline. Without a ceremony, one day you're passing a window dressed in crisp shirts and folded khakis. The next, it's covered in white paper, and no one can tell you when it's coming back. In 2025, Banana Republic announced it would close 130 stores after 7 straight quarters of declining offline sales. Executives promised to pivot to digital, but promises don't fill storefronts. And in the malls and corners where Banana Republic once stood, there's now only silence. The reasons echo familiar patterns: a shrinking middle class, changing work culture, younger shoppers turning to thrift or sustainability, and the suffocating rise of e-commerce. But beneath the economic terms lies a personal erosion, because what Banana Republic really offered wasn't just cotton and wool, it offered proof. Proof that someone like you still had a place to dress well, feel capable, and walk into a room with your shoulders back. Its disappearance marked something heavier: the slow collapse of that fragile middle. The group that's too proud for fast fashion but too stretched for luxury. The ones who used to have somewhere to turn when they needed to look ready for a new job. A second interview. A better first impression, and now that in-between space is disappearing. The infrastructure for basic personal dignity, well-tailored, affordable, dependable, is being erased store by store. And when that space disappears, something subtle but sharp sinks in. A teacher on her way to a conference notices there's nowhere left to find a blazer that fits and doesn't cost $200. A retired clerk who used to treat himself to one new shirt every season now skips the mall altogether. A 40-something parent, not rich but not reckless, no longer knows where to shop for a family wedding. They're not being driven toward better options. They're being pushed out into spaces that don't fit them, styles that don't represent them, or choices that don't include them. Banana Republic wasn't glamorous, it wasn't loud, it didn't sell dreams, it sold functions with a little pride. And for a long time, that was enough. But now, even that quiet middle ground is being paved over. So if the very brands built on stability and quiet confidence are deemed obsolete, what's left to catch those who don't belong to either extreme? Number 6, Bloomingdales. What does it mean when a store that survived 2 world wars quietly disappears in a time of peace? There was a time when Bloomingdales wasn't just a store, it was a ritual. The heavy glass doors, the polished marble floors, the scent of cologne at the entrance. It was where you went not just to buy, but to celebrate. A wedding gift, a retirement present, a coat that marked a new chapter in your life. In many cities, Bloomingdales wasn't just retail, it was reassurance. That elegance still had a place in this world. But in 2025, that place is shrinking quietly, piece by piece, as part of a 3-year restructuring plan. Macys, the parent company, is phasing out dozens of Bloomingdale's locations across the country. Some close with a press release, others just stop opening one day. Storefronts once full of light now sit dark. The signature bags are gone, no announcements, no commemorations. Just silence. The reasons are sterile, sky-high rent, falling in-store sales, competition from boutique brands, and digital luxury platforms. But behind those numbers is something more unsettling. Because when a 163-year-old symbol of grace starts to vanish without ceremony, what we lose isn't just a place to shop, we lose a small piece of the social contract that said if you worked hard enough, you too could afford beauty just once in a while. Bloomingdales was never for everyone, every day, but it was for someone, someday. A promotion, a graduation, a quiet victory. It was a reminder that some parts of life could still be tender and cared for. Now, that reminder is fading, and in its place, vacancy signs, malls without foot traffic, small designers without anchor retailers, stylists, fragrance specialists, personal shoppers all left adrift, many after decades of loyal work. Communities lose one more reason to walk through the heart of their city. So if even Bloomingdale's an institution that weathered wars, depressions, and cultural revolutions can be erased in the span of a few quarterly reports, what happens next? And when the final location closes its doors, will anyone be there to say goodbye? Number 7, American Eagle Outfitters. What does it mean when even the clothes that made us feel normal start disappearing from the map? There are brands that define fashion, and then there are brands that define a phase of life. American Eagle wasn't about luxury. It was about being 16 and needing a hoodie that made you feel safe, about buying your first pair of jeans with your own money, about walking into school and feeling just for once that you didn't stand out in the wrong way. But now, that quiet comfort is crumbling. As of 2025, American Eagle has shuttered 250 locations across the US, including dozens in suburban and rural malls where it once thrived. Within a single quarter, the company lost $42 million. Sales dropped as the stock plummeted 7.4% in just one day. And yet, the headlines were quiet. No protests, no viral outrage, just more dark windows in once familiar places. The reasons echo across retail: a shrinking middle class, a digital native generation that shops secondhand, and an economy where even a basic t-shirt starts to feel like a splurge. Malls are no longer destinations. They're fading monuments to a time when teenagers could linger without buying, when fashion meant community, not algorithms. And as American Eagle fades, so too does a certain kind of teenage ritual. Gone are the weekend shifts for college students saving up for books. Gone are the part-time holiday jobs that gave young workers their first taste of responsibility. Gone is the fitting room laughter, the nervous excitement of picking out clothes for your first day of high school, your first date, your first job interview. And with each store closure, an entire support system around youth retail mall kiosks, food courts, security teams loses relevance and income. But the loss goes deeper than employment. It touches identity. Because American Eagle was never about trends. It was about reassurance that no matter how awkward, unsure, or overwhelmed you felt, there was a style, a price point, and a place where you'd be accepted. When that disappears, young people are left to navigate adulthood with fewer anchors, fewer soft landings, fewer places to feel enough. And in many ways, this is not just about teenagers. It's about what happens when society quietly stops offering its youngest members a place to belong. When the storefronts of adolescence go dark, when the uniform of belonging is no longer affordable or available, something unspoken slips away. Because when even the simplest symbols of growing up vanish without warning, what kind of adulthood are we preparing them for? Number 8, Fossil. What does it mean when a watch brand runs out of time? There was a moment when receiving a Fossil watch meant something. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't expensive, but it was a marker. A soft leather strap handed to you on your 30th birthday. A silver dial clasped around your wrist before your first job interview. It said, "You're not a kid anymore." Today, those watches sit untouched in the glass cases of half-lit stores. And those stores are fading from the map. By the end of 2025, Fossil will have closed at least 20 locations, after reporting a staggering $96 million quarterly loss. But the number itself isn't the real loss, it's the silence surrounding it. The way this once iconic brand is disappearing, not with scandal or uproar, but with a quiet shrug from a world that no longer needs what it once stood for. Smartwatches have made time digital. The smartphone made it invisible. And somewhere along the way, The idea that a gift could hold memory, or that fashion could mean responsibility, began to fade too. This isn't just a retail story, it's a cultural aftershock. Middle-aged Americans lose choice now. A father wondering what to buy his son after graduation no longer sees a fossil watch as the answer. A young woman trying to mark a moment of change in her life no longer walks into that store at all. And the collapse doesn't just take down the brand. It takes down the network behind it. Craftsmen who once shaped steel and stitched leather. Regional sellers who stocked mall kiosks. Designers who imagined maturity in the form of timepieces. So what happens when even a watch no longer represents time? Maybe what we're really watching isn't the death of a brand, but the vanishing of the last quiet symbol of adulthood in a world that no longer has time to grow up. Number 9. Foot Locker. When sneakers vanish from the neighborhood, what else is running out of reach? There was a time when Foot Locker was more than a store. It was a finish line and a starting point where kids picked out back-to-school shoes with wide eyes, where athletes grabbed their first real pair of Nikes, and where neighborhood teens gathered just to try things on, even if they couldn't afford them yet. It wasn't just a sneaker shop, it was a promise that you could move, run, rise. But in 2025, that promise is being pulled off the shelves. Foot Locker has announced plans to shut down nearly 400 stores by the end of next year, retreating from malls and local centers that no longer match the consumer base. Translation: if your zip code doesn't bring in high-volume profits, you're off the map. Sales have plummeted across brick-and-mortar locations. The company lost significant footing after failing to transition quickly enough to digital-first retail. But behind the cold numbers is a quieter heartbreak, one that hits working-class families the hardest. The collapse of Foot Locker isn't just about shoes. It's about the erosion of one of the last places where people could physically connect to a sense of progress. Parents used to save up for months just to buy their child a new pair of Jordans for Christmas or the start of basketball season. Now, those parents stare at for lease signs on their main street and wonder where to go next. Teenagers, especially in urban neighborhoods, lose a social space, a cultural hub. Young part-timers, many of them students or first-time workers, lose jobs that helped pay for textbooks, groceries, even rent, and local economies built around foot traffic from sneaker drops and weekend sales lose their pulse. Foot Locker was never just about footwear. It was about mobility, aspiration, having the right gear to walk into a room and feel like you belonged. But when that space disappears quietly, without fanfare, what message are we sending to the next generation? If even a pair of sneakers is now out of reach for millions of Americans, how long before the path forward is too? Number 11. Francescas. When the small boutique disappears, so does a little joy we didn't realize we needed. Francescas was never built to compete with giants. It didn't offer sprawling aisles or luxury brands behind glass. It offered something else, something quieter, more personal. For many women, it was the one place in the mall that didn't feel intimidating. The lighting was warm, the shelves were playful, the earrings sparkled just enough. It was where you went to find a dress for brunch, a gift for your sister, a candle that smelled like home. It didn't shout. It was an invitation. Now, those soft corners of color are vanishing. Back in its peak. Francesca's had over 700 stores, each one a pocket of charm tucked into malls and side streets across America. But in 2025, the brand has fewer than 275 left. Bankruptcy looms. Again. Nearly 100 stores shuttered just this past quarter. Retail signs read, "Everything must go," and behind the checkout counter, part-time workers quietly pack up inventory they once enjoyed helping others discover. The world changed faster than Francescas could pivot. Gen Z lives online. TikTok decides fashion. Trends now arrive by algorithm, not by display window. And mega retailers like Shein and Temu flood the market with prices Francescas could never match. In a culture of convenience and speed, boutique delight got edged out. But the loss isn't just about market share, it's emotional erosion. Francesca's was often the first job for young women. A space where you could learn confidence, customer care, and personal style all in one. It was where a teenage girl might earn her first paycheck and spend part of it on a bracelet she fell in love with during her break. Its closure also removed something more intangible, the right to enjoy small beauty without justification. You didn't need a reason to walk in. You didn't need to spend big, and no one ever made you feel like you didn't belong. Without it, many malls feel emptier in spirit, not just in square footage. What remains are vast stores, harsh lights, and silent corridors where individuality used to flourish. When even the most welcoming corners of consumer life no longer have a place in the economy, what message does that send to the average woman? That joy must be justified, that small indulgences are no longer allowed, because if even boutiques built on kindness and whimsy can't survive, what kind of shopping experience and what kind of society are we really building in their absence? This is no longer just about store closures. Every logo that disappears means thousands of jobs lost. Every empty building means a community losing its social center. Every fallen brand marks another crack in what once held America together. This isn't a retail crisis, it's a crisis of identity, memory, and survival. How many of these brands were near your home? How many vanished without you realizing? Share your story, because your memory might be someone else's warning.